Good morning, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well. My name is Brittany Sedlak, and I am currently an advocate at the Wayne Center. I am disappointed that I can't be there with you today. However, I'm really looking forward to sharing with you about some basic counseling techniques. This is a topic about which I'm very passionate. I have been working with pregnancy centers since 2008 from my hometown near Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, along with some work in Grove City, Pennsylvania, and the Durham, Raleigh, North Carolina area, and now here in Wayne. I graduated from Grove City College with a degree in psychology and minors in family studies and Christian ministries, and I'm currently in a master's program for clinical counseling and trauma studies. So again, I'm very excited to be here with you today, and let's get started. When thinking about counseling techniques, we first want to consider what it is that we're looking for. There are two main aspects of what we are looking for in a session: content and process. Content is what is specifically said, such as the client's choice of words. Process is everything else, all of the nonverbal, how the content is conveyed, themes, body language, interactions, etc. So for instance, you may have a client who is smiling, who is relaxed, who is engaged, versus a client who is withdrawn, head down, into herself. So that really sends a message as well. It's not just about the words that she's sharing with us. It's about all of these other aspects that we're picking up during the session too. Listening to and observing both content and process provide us with such a powerful message. It really gives us a rich and full picture of what it is that the client is really wanting us to hear. So how do we gain this insight? How do we get to this roadmap of the client's inner world? We do this through attending. Attending is the concept of orienting oneself physically to the client to show you are completely aware of him or her. Clients have to feel they have our undivided attention. They have to feel safe. They have to know they can trust us. They have to feel they are cared for, genuinely heard. There are many ways that we can conquer this concept of attending. So body language is very, very important. We don't want to be moving around. We don't want to be distracted. We want to be focused, present, engaged with the client in the here and now moment with the client. We want to also watch our own body posture. What is it that we are sending off? What signals are we sending off by the way that we are sitting, by the way that we are either engaged or withdrawn from the client? Our body posture, our body language says a lot to the client. Along with this, we also want to consider what our face is saying. It is amazing how powerful even just small changes in our face can be. And the clients will pick up on this. So it's so important to be aware of not just the words that we're sharing as well, but just as we're watching for these things from the client, they're also picking these aspects up from ourselves as well. So we have to be aware of, do we look surprised or shocked? Do we look critical or judgmental? Or do we look warm and inviting and understanding? Along with attending, active listening is a key technique in our counseling sessions. Active listening shows the client that we are engaged and that we are hearing what they're saying. Active listening is wonderful because it helps us to make sure that we're really on the same page, that we're tracking with the client. It gives us the opportunity to be a perception check in a way, because with active listening, we're able to figure out, okay, am I really hearing and understanding what the client is saying? That way, if we're misinterpreting something, it gives room, it gives space for the client to correct that misinterpretation. Or if we're hearing something correctly, that really just gives weight and value to what the client is saying. It affirms what she is sharing with us. It gives her encouragement that we do hear, we do understand. How do we go about active listening? We want to consider, again, not just our words, but how we present the words. So we want to be making eye contact. We want to be affirming non-verbally, which we'll talk about in a moment. We want to be physically engaged in the present moment with the client. And we also want to use the power of our words through active listening. So there are 4 basic parts of active listening. Listening and recalling is the first part. In listening and recalling, we're basically hearing the whole message of what the client is telling us. And we're signaling in on key themes, key emotions that the client really seems to be expressing that are weighing heavily on his or her heart. So we're listening for events, situations, people, emotions, whatever theme it may be, whatever seems to really stand out. So we take the whole of what we're saying, so we make sure we're not missing anything, and then we kind of zone in on the most important parts that it seems like we're picking up from the client. Then we want to rephrase. We want to rephrase in as concise of a manner as possible. We want to rephrase the key words and ideas that the client has used to communicate his or her concerns. And we want to do this in a fresh or different perspective. Again, a great perception check, because we can make sure that we're tracking with the client and it really validates what the client is saying. It says to the client, I hear you and I'm understanding you. So how can we do this? It's best to rephrase in the style of an open-ended question. So, Jane, it sounds like you are feeling a lot of anger about your mother's opinions right now. Is that correct? Another option is, what I hear you saying, Jane, is that you're feeling a lot of pressure from your boyfriend to have an abortion. Or it sounds as though you feel very conflicted when you're talking about whether or not to place your child for adoption. So these questions are open-ended. Again, they're great because it allows the client then to come back and to continue that conversation. The next aspect is very much related, but it's reflecting the client's feelings. So in rephrasing, we're focusing on a major theme, a major concept, but in reflecting the client's feelings, we're especially focused on the emotion that the client is expressing to us. This sort of effective reflection in an open-ended question in a respectful manner really helps, again, for us to make sure we're on the same page with the client and for the client to feel that she is validated, she is understood. And it's very important for us to think carefully about the words that we're choosing to communicate. So if a client is expressing something and seems to have a lot of rage, we don't want to come back and say, you sound very depressed, you sound very lonely. We want to match what she is expressing. So, Jane, I'm sensing a lot of anger right now. Do you feel a lot of anger? So we're focusing in on what that emotion is. Or if the client has not verbally addressed an emotion, if she's been skirting around the actual naming of an emotion, we can help her come to that conclusion. We can open the door and say, you're talking a lot about your family, and I wonder if there is a lot of stress that you're feeling. I wonder if there's a lot of confusion that you're feeling with that situation. Again, it's great because sometimes the client may come back and say, well, no, that's not what I'm feeling. I'm actually feeling offended. I'm actually feeling lonely. And that's great because then we can get on the same page with the client and say, we can flip a little bit and then get more in line with the client. We know what it is that she's trying to express. Through all of this, the great thing is that the client has the ability to share what it is that she's truly feeling. Instead of people just assuming, instead of people talking over her, instead of people just saying what they want, we are listening and we are fully comprehending what the client's message is to us. In active listening, affirmations are great. Affirmations come through the techniques of active listening. They also come through our verbal and nonverbal responses. So our body language, a slight lean forward, not too much. We don't want to be invading the client's space and make her feel that we're forcing ourselves into her space, but a slight lean forward, a slight tilt of the head, a slight nod to show that we are engaged. Even nonverbal utterances. hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, hmm, mm-hmm. Those all help the client to realize, I'm being affirmed, I am safe, I am heard, and she feels empowered to be able to continue on building that alliance with us, building that trust with us, building that therapeutic relationship. A little bit more about open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are fantastic because we never want to imply, we never want to assume that we know what the client is feeling, because we don't. Oftentimes we might be wrong. Oftentimes we're just not really getting the message, and we never want to come across as though we're assuming that we know what the client is truly feeling, because we don't. So open-ended questions are fantastic. Say more about. Tell me about what blank is like. I wonder if blank. Help me to understand more about blank. Open-ended questions are great to use because they formulate a cycle. So they help us to gain more information and expand upon what it is that we've already been given from the client. So the I wonder if, the tell me more about what, say more about what that is like for you. A great approach is following a client's response with an open-ended question. They respond, you paraphrase, you reflect it back to them. This encourages the client to share more, and it avoids a repetitive pattern of question, answer, because it's supposed to be a conversation, not an interrogation. Another wonderful affirming technique is to thank the client after she shared something that's weighing heavily on her heart. Jane, I just want to take a moment first and thank you for sharing all of that with me, because I can tell it took a lot of courage for you to share that with me, and I can only imagine how difficult that was. So I want you to know that I really value that, and I thank you for that. Again, this is empowering the client. It's letting her know that we are there with her on the same page. A little bit more about self-monitoring. In such conversations, we want to be very careful of our word choices. The wrong word choicing, especially when it comes to word choicing involving slang or casual phrases, not only does this come across as unprofessional, but it could come across as offensive to the client. So sometimes she may not understand our slang terms, or sometimes she may have a different meaning to them than we do. So it's very important that we are careful and that we are very, very aware of what we're saying, of the words that we're using. We need to be gentle in our speech. We need to be aware. Again, with the self-monitoring, not only the words, but our facial expressions too. We need to be wary of our instant reactions, of what just the slightest changes of face muscles could be, because the clients will pick up on this and the clients will know, and that sends a very powerful message to them as well. So self-monitoring is key. Self-monitoring, the ability to put up a filter, to take a moment and pause before you just blurt something out. It's very important. Again, I just want to emphasize that our words have such power. So our words have the power to be a gentle healing balm. They have the power to be uplifting and encouraging. They are tools through which the Lord can speak great truth into a woman or man's heart. However, they also have the power to inflict great pain, and they have the power to hurt people. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is for us as advocates to speak slowly, to think before we speak, to filter, that our words are spoken in love and in truth. A few notes on counselor self-disclosure. This is the idea and the concept of sharing your personal feelings, experiences, or reactions with the client. This can present a very gray area at times, because not only does it get into some gray area of what you should share as a counselor, as an advocate, and you can blur those lines, but it could be harmful because it takes away from the client. It takes the attention and the focus off of the client. So if absolutely necessary, you want to do so sparingly and only once a strong therapeutic alliance, a strong relationship, trust relationship with the client has been well established. When you do disclose, when you do express maybe a personal anecdote, maybe a personal reaction, it should be centered around content that is relevant to the client, that is intended to help them. However, again, as a rule, it's best not to disclose unless there's really a pressing clinical need, which can't be met in any other way. We want to be very careful about what we are disclosing about our personal lives, our personal experiences, because that is completely different from empathy. We don't need to have self-disclosure to empathize. And empathize is the next concept that I'm going to talk about. So empathy is not the idea of sharing similar experiences and saying, oh, I've been there, done that, let me tell you about my experience. Again, I don't want to discredit the weight and the power that personal anecdotes can have, but we need to be very discerning about them. There's a place and a time for them. So those are, that's not necessary always for empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel or imagine another person's emotional experience. This is not just sympathy. Sympathy is just maybe feeling bad for somebody. It's feeling sad for somebody. It's so much more than that. Empathy is actually the ability to perceive another's experience and then to communicate that perception back to the individual, to clarify, to amplify that individual's own experience and the meaning of that experience. So again, it's not identifying with the client and sharing similar experiences of your own life or of somebody that you know. It is not saying, I know how you feel. This is so critical. We never, ever, ever want to tell a client, oh, I know how you feel. Because the truth is, we don't. We have no idea. There's no way that we can begin to comprehend what is in each individual's heart. Yes, there are definitely common themes of pain and suffering within the human condition that we all experience them. However, we experience them in our own unique ways. And we need to be affirming and valuing that each story is different, each client is different. So we do not want to discredit our client. We do not want to pretend as though we know, because this will create a wall. This will push the client away, and maybe she won't say it, but in her mind she'll be thinking, you don't know, there's no way that you can know. And it won't make her feel as validated. So we want to be very careful that we don't say, I know how you feel, I completely understand. Instead, we want to use gentle, loving expressions such as, I can't even begin to imagine how difficult that decision must have been for you. Or, Jane, I can only imagine how difficult this must be for you to be feeling the pressure from your boyfriend to have an abortion. Tell me more about what those feelings are like. So in empathy, those are phrases that we can enter into. We can open up a door through which we can enter into a conversation. We can empathize. We can take on what the client is feeling. Empathy is feeling what you are feeling in my heart. So feeling what the client is feeling in your heart. Another concept is unconditional positive regard. This is an expression of caring and nurturance as well as acceptance. It includes conveying warm thoughts through responding to messages, verbally and non-verbally, with non-judgmental, non-critical reactions, giving your client respect, affirming the inherent strength and worth of your client, her capacity to move forward in life, her capacity to make the best out of a situation, encouraging your client, being her support, cheering her on, saying, I know you can do this. We can do this. I know we can. I know that you are strong enough. You have been through so much. I can't even imagine what you have been through, but I can see that you have such strength in your heart, and we can move forward from this. Unconditional positive regard is really, again, any expression, any verbalization, even any non-verbalization, but any message that you're sending to the client that she has worth, she has value, she is respected, she is heard, she is cared about. Additionally, genuineness, we really want to keep this in mind because clients will know when we're not being genuine. Clients will be able to see through the walls that we put up. We need to be displaying true congruence between our outer worlds, our behaviors, and our inner feelings. We need to take up postures of non-defensiveness, non-role-playing. We don't want to be pretentious. We don't want to be know-it-alls. Similarly to the importance of not using slang, casual phrases, we also want to be speaking in a way that matches our clients. We don't want to be using words and phrases and terminology that the client may have no clue about, because this will really, it will make the client feel as though we are above him or her. It will make the client feel as though they are not as significant, as though we are speaking down to them. We never want to be talking down to a client. We need to be on the client's level. We need to be matching where the client is at and how we can best speak to the client. So we really need to be on the level of the client to match the way that the words that she may understand. Speak in a way that will be heard by your client, not in a way that is using very advanced terminology that may just confuse her. A very important concept to remember is that we are not above a client. I am not looking down, speaking down to a client. We are side by side. We are equals. We are working together towards the same goal of the client. But we are on the road together, alongside of each other. It is not me helping you from down in your low place. It is me coming alongside of you and walking with you. A little bit about the concept of genuineness and how it ties into the next point of where do we go from here. As I mentioned, clients will be able to see right through you if you're not being genuine. They will pick up on this. They will know. And there may be times when you are faced with a situation where you don't know how to respond. You are faced with a very difficult issue. Maybe it's involving a client's use of drugs. Maybe it is a client's stance on sex. Maybe it is an issue dealing with race. Whatever it may be. If you are uncomfortable, if you have issues about a particular topic within your own heart and life that aren't necessarily resolved or that just bring you pure discomfort, you need to acknowledge those. Not to the client. Don't share that with the client, but you need to acknowledge those in your own life, and you need to safeguard yourself from the effects that those could have. Because if you go into a session and you're not feeling genuine, if you are just not able to explore a particular concept with a client, if you have very strong feelings about a particular topic, that's really going to influence your session. And it could even harm clients. It could turn them away. It could hurt them and put up a wall. And so it's very important that you are discerning regarding your own stance on controversial topics, on difficult issues. We need to know where it is that we stand. We need to know personally where it is that we stand, not where it's expected, not what we think is the social norm, but I need to know, okay, this is maybe an issue that if I tried to work through this issue with the client, it would be very difficult for me, and I think that it would be at the expense of the client, and I think it would harm the client. It's okay. There are issues that all of us have difficulty discussing with somebody, that we all may find as barriers to open, honest, genuine sessions with a client. We need to be discerning about those. We need to have the humility and the wisdom to recognize those in our own lives and address them when we think they may become a problem. Again, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to change your mindset or change your stance, but you do need to deal with it, or have the discernment to say, I don't think I can take this case because this may harm the client. You need to be very proactive about this because, again, the client will know. So you need to know your own limits is basically what this comes down to. Know your own limits and trust and collaborate with your supervisor. That is so important, to have a safe space with the supervisor, to be able to share the struggles about a particular case, to be able to share your maybe wariness, to be able to share your doubts or confusion, but to have that safe person, that supervisor to whom you can go and you can bring this issue and say, I need help, I need an ear, I need somebody, in a way that you can't do with just a colleague or with a family member even, but in a way where you do have that freedom to explore and broaden the conversation a little bit more with your supervisor. So along with being self-aware and along with taking steps to have the wisdom to say no, to have the wisdom to go to a supervisor, in session, there still will be many times when we are shocked by something that a client says or a story that a client shares or brings up with us. It takes incredible effort to keep our faces, our reactions still, calm, accepting. Even the slightest reactions are noticed. And to do so takes practice and takes work to be able to keep ourselves focused and present in the session. Some ways that we can do this: speaking slowly, taking deep breaths, practicing calming relaxation techniques outside of our sessions, to be mindful. These will help us if we practice them outside of sessions. They're like muscles, so they need to be exercised, they need to be strengthened. But practicing relaxation techniques outside of a session is incredibly helpful, because then we will strengthen those muscles and we will be able to bring them into the session with us, so that when a client says something shocking, we don't immediately look alarmed and we don't feel ourselves start to get very anxious and start to move around out of discomfort. But even though our minds may be racing inside, we can still be calm, collected, open, and accepting of the client. So again, practice these outside of the session too. Practice your deep breathing. Practice watching your facial expressions and the reactions. In a session, we want to be in the here and now. It is so important that we are fully present, not letting our minds wander, but really being engaged in the moment. Again, this takes such practice. It's a discipline that you need to work on. It's a muscle that you have to exercise. But we need to be fully engaged and present so that we are able to connect with the client, to help the woman explore and name emotions and feelings one step at a time. We don't want to get overwhelmed with everything that she brings to us. We want to take one step at a time with her. Being fully aware, being fully present, thinking to yourself, what is it that this person is really trying to tell me? What is it that this person is really trying to say to me? There's so much rich and deep meaning in that space, that intimate space between two people. Amazing things can happen in that space. I want to caution you against always being in the head and thinking of the why, because we're often so quick to jump to solutions and jump to logic. And that's great and that's wonderful, but sometimes we just need to take it to the heart for a little bit longer to explore the what and the how of the client. Yes, we will get to goal setting. Yes, we will get to planning. Yes, we will get to moving forward. But first, take a moment and just be with the client in her emotions. So when you ask her how she's feeling and she responds with, well, I think, we want to say, that's wonderful and those are things that you think, but what is it that you feel? What are your emotions? Because yes, we will get to the goal setting, we will get to the planning, but first, be engaged, be present with the very real, emotional human being sitting across from you. Along with this, embrace silence. Silence is beautiful. Don't feel the need to always have something to say. Sometimes the most powerful moments of change occur in the silence, when you are just sitting with a person, giving them your full attention, affirming the fullness of that emotional environment. You do not need to be a wise advice giver and have the perfect words to say. Oftentimes we're so caught up in our minds, the client is still talking and we're already trying to figure out, what do I say? What are the perfect words? What's the next step? What's the plan? When we miss what the client is really trying to share with us. Embrace silence. When she says something, even if you don't know how to respond, even if you do know how to respond, take a moment and just let the power of the affirmation and the alliance, the relationship between you and the client, let that really sink in. Don't be in a rush to just talk. We want to always remember the true purpose of our roles. Yes, we are there to make connections, to point out patterns, to help offer new frameworks, to set goals, to move forward. But we are not trained psychotherapists trying to interpret or analyze the deep unconscious motivations of our client. So don't let the weight of that be something on you, because that's not our job. That's not our goal. Yes, there's much that we can gain from deeper exploration and insight, and that should be our goal. To help the women work through what is going on, to be a supportive confidant, to help remove obstacles to change. We want to be collaborating with the client. We want to help them identify possible solutions and alternatives, to give her the encouragement and empower her to say, you know what? I have the tools, I have the strength, I have the motivation, and I have the help to move forward, to engage in new opportunities, to not let this defeat me, to flourish, honestly. We are coming alongside of a client. We are saying, you do not have to go through this alone. Let me do this with you. Let me be here for you. We are helping to carry that burden from her. It doesn't mean we let it weigh our shoulders down, but we take that burden, we lay it at the foot of the cross, and we walk alongside that client. Most important thing for us to always remember is prayer. The Lord will give us wisdom. The Holy Spirit will work in some unbelievable ways to provide us with guidance and insight. We need to rely on Scripture, we need to listen to His voice, and we need to seek truth throughout the whole session. These ways we will be able to connect with the client, we will be able to care for the client, to love her, and to really help her to understand, I'm not in this alone, and I can do this. Thank you so much. I have provided my contact information at the bottom of the sheet. If you would like to get in contact with me, I would love to talk with you more about any of these topics. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Thanks again, and have a great day.